So our son was born, and he had perfect hearing, and by 10 months he was saying daddy and duck, and one day he got his first fever, and on a Saturday morning, and called the doctor twice Saturday, twice Sunday, followed all orders, and I thought Monday morning he was sleeping finally. We had been awake over the weekend, and I called the doctor's office, and they said, why don't you bring him up? And unbeknownst to me, he was in a coma. And they took him to the hospital and did a spinal tap, and he had spinal meningitis. And they had to ambulance him to Indianapolis, to the Children's Hospital, where he was in intensive care for 3 days. And when I was finally allowed to hold him, I started singing I've Been Working on the Railroad, which was a song we always sang. And he looked at me and put his hands up to my mouth. And I said, he can't hear me. And they went, oh, yes, he can. And he was in the hospital for 24 days. And for the first week and a half, I kept telling people, I don't think he can hear. And of course I started crying, and I had just seen on the Today Show that cochlear implants had just been allowed for children 2 and older. And so I remember asking, can he get a cochlear implant? And they were shocked I even knew about it. And we were told at the hospital, when you go home, make sure he sees your lips. And that's all the support we had. We started out doing doing signed exact English because a neighbor had a sister whose son was deaf, and so they gave us things, so we started doing signed exact English. Then the deaf school came to our house, and they said, no, he needs to do ASL. And so we started doing ASL, and then we got a letter from my best friend's high school or college roommate, who was an oral deaf woman, who wrote me a letter saying, please give your son a chance to speak. Fast forward, he wore hearing aids, even though he had a severe to profound hearing loss. He wore hearing aids. We had an auditory verbal therapist, and then for 4 years we did that until I got a letter or a magazine from A.G. Bell, of which I was a member way back then. And there was a magazine called OK Kids, and a doctor named Dr. Epstein who wrote a column. And he was talking about making sure your children had audiograms, confirming audiograms, so that you knew what their hearing levels were. And I called the number at the bottom because our son, in all the years, they were never the same. His audiograms changed. And Dr. Epstein answered the phone, which is just a gift from God, and he yelled at me, frankly, because he said, what, your son had meningitis? Cochleas can ossify, which means bone starts growing in there where the hair cells are supposed to be. You need to go to Riley Hospital with Dr. Rich Miyamoto and have him check this out. So I called, got him in there, they did an MRI. His one ear was totally ossified, and his other ear, his right ear, had a little bit of ossification, but inside more, they thought they could get at least a partial cochlear implant in. And this is back, we're talking about the N22 cochlear implant, which there are so many more cochlear implants since then now. And they got the full insertion in, which meant it went all the way to the very inner part of the ear. And so in July, they programmed him and he could hear. So fast forward, he's 29 years old. He's married to a beautiful nurse who works in a cardiac at Riley Hospital where he was. They met on Tinder. And his line was, I was a Riley baby, because she was a Riley nurse, and I guess that hooked her.